ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ ॐ गणानां त्वा गणपतिगुं हवामहे कविं कवीनामुपमश्रवस्तमं ज्येष्ठराजं ब्रह्मणस्पत आनः शृण्वन्नोतिभिः सीदसादनम् ॐ श्रीमहागणपतये नमः ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ तत्सत् So today we have two questions. I will address them. First, the question connected to what we discussed in the last class regarding the meditation. We will start with that. Last week you mentioned about meditation, and I would like to confirm whether my understanding is correct. The word stillness means that even if sensations, within bracket external information, and changes in thoughts due to them occur, sensations and changes in thoughts due to them occur, we stay as the witness. Is this correct? We stay committed to the attitude of being the witness. That would be more precise. You are anyway the witness. The problem is not the fact that you are the witness. You are the witness, the pure consciousness that is untouched by the waking, dream, and sleep. That is what you are. But as a meditation practice, when we talk about witnessing, it is an attitude. So, what is staying as a witness here means not going behind something that you like, not being driven by what you don't like, and not acting on any of the reactive impulses or the responses. Whenever there is a stimulus, like how you said here, the sensations and the changes in thoughts due to them occur, we stay committed to not clicking on the automatic response. I will put it like that. Changes in thoughts is basically the response to stimuli. Okay. And we stay as the witness. Here it means we stay in the bracket, you have put consciousness. We stay as the witness, bracket consciousness. No. Putting that way, it is not correct. You stay committed to the witnessing attitude. That is correct. Then the next line, I had the thought that I have to stay as witness. Correct. That is exactly what we are talking about. That's what is meditation. Committing to one thought process is meditation. But if I practice, I will be able to stay as a witness for longer naturally. That is the samskara. I mentioned about what is called nirodha samskara. Just like how I am not able to resist being a participant in the content of the mind, just like how I naturally tend to move according to the various instinctive responses that arise in me, that awaken my sense of doership and push me into action, either mental action, verbal action, or physical action. That is my usual nature, right? So I am now practicing non-reacting, simple attention without reaction, without activating the sense of doership, while staying committed to simple attention, right? This is the witnessing attitude. What happens by practice? You will develop this attitude will become a samskara. You will develop an intrinsic nature to not react. The attention without a personal response becomes a second nature. How for a normal active person the tendency to act comes naturally, and the meditation practice becomes necessary and an effort. Similarly, for a seasoned meditator, after a good amount of practice and dedication, the tendency to not react becomes natural. The witnessing attitude becomes a samskara and it becomes natural, and automatically the attention shines, and there is no tendency. You don't feel like being pushed around by the various subconscious responses that come in the mind. Your ego doesn't become active. Your ego becomes very passive and observant. It is something like practicing the attitude of listening. No, when somebody is talking, we are supposed to listen, correct? So there are people who listen who are not good listeners and they keep on responding and talking in between. Then they say, please practice listening. Then they develop a listening attitude. And that listening attitude, they keep telling themselves, I should listen, I should listen. That listening attitude over a period of time becomes natural. Then what happens? You have a listening samskara. You become a natural listener. The listening is happening anyway. But a person who has not developed the listener samskara, you become a constant interference. You have a tendency to samskara to interfere in the conversation, to express yourself. So the tendency to express oneself becomes nullified by the power of the listening capability or the listener samskara. Similarly, the witnessing attitude samskara will make this whole process natural and last longer. That's how we should understand. It is a certain samskara that develops in the buddhi. Now, another part of the question. In my previous learning, I learned that between inhaling and exhaling, or between the japa mantra, the time before the next mantra comes, I mean the gap between two mantra chantings, we can just say stay in consciousness without thoughts moving. Can I understand that this is something that lies beyond the meditation practice which you mentioned this time? No, it is the same thing, this same idea. In fact, uh, this is a prelude to the meditation that I taught in the last class. This witnessing the or paying attention to the gap between two mantras, what happens is you are experiencing that state of mind, the chitta. You are experiencing the quality of chitta where there is awareness but there are no thoughts, there is no sankalpa. One sankalpa arises, it's over. Before the next sankalpa arises, there is a quiet, that silence. So you are experiencing that silence, that quality of the mind, and you are habituating the attention to that quality of the mind. And that develops a very fine attention, a quality of attention over the process by which sankalpa or the will to do, the will to act, the will to do arises in the mind. There is an idea that I must chant the mantra. Then there is the memory of the mantra. Then there are the details of the mantra. Then there is the will to chant the mantra. Combining with this manifests as the action of chanting the mantra, either mentally or verbally. Correct? Now this entire process comes within a split second. And then that sankalpa to chant, once you have chanted, that sankalpa to chant, the will to chant calms down. Just like how when you are having potato chips, one potato chip goes inside, you are satisfied for a second. Then the urge for the next piece, to have the next piece comes up. Then you take the, like they say in the potato chips advertisement, no one can eat just one, like that. So one after the other, it comes. Similarly, one thought after the other comes. Similarly, one mantra after the other comes, right? There is a satiation when you have a bhoga, when you have a food item, you eat it, there is a satisfaction. And then the next urge comes, it drives you into action to pick up that potato chip and eat. There is a satisfaction. There is a moment without the urge to eat more. Right? So when the desire is satisfied, the mind does not seek the object. Similarly, when the sankalpa to chant the mantra arises and the chanting is over, at the end of the chanting of the mantra, there is a fulfillment of that will to do. So for a split second, there is no will to do, there is only awareness. That is what you are experiencing when you are concentrating on the gap between two mantras. So this entire process, this entire cycle of how the will to do, the information both combine and then they manifest as the chant. This entire process in all its minute details can be understood very clearly in awareness, in consciousness, when and you can familiarize with all those aspects when you practice this meditation of concentrating on the gap between two mantras. And that awareness gives you a certain understanding about how the mind moves. Then you stop chanting the mantra and you apply the same logic to the naturally occurring thought process, gap between thoughts. And then you will be able to somehow get that knack to switch off the tendency to convert an information into an active thought. Listen to this carefully. The tendency to convert an information in your mind into an active thought. That tendency can be switched off. Just like how you have a tendency to lift your right hand. When I say lift your right hand, there is a tendency to lift, right? Then you drop it. Now there will be the tendency, you see how the tendency to raise the right hand, then there is that sensation now you experience. But you are not lifting. Right? So you have a choice whether to lift or not to lift. Right? Similarly, there is information in the mind and there is a tendency to activate that information and that becomes a thought because there is a certain personal involvement with whatever the thought represents through a like or a dislike, ragadvesha. Because of that, there is a conversion of simple information into an active thought process. If you really watch keenly, this is what you will find. So you will somehow develop that knack or the ability of attention at the point where information converts into a thought, where the vasana, the personal vasana connected to whatever is the information of that thought. If I say gulab jamun, the information awakens a certain relationship with the gulab jamun. You like the gulab jamun or you don't like the gulab jamun. It's a sweet. So those who don't know, it's an Indian sweet. So either that gulab jamun is simply an information, but how the gulab jamun converts into a desire or aversion, that is what is created through the personal association with information. Every information is connected to your ego process through a personal association of a like or a dislike, which leads to excitatory or inhibitory mechanism in the brain. Now what happens is you get a very high level of awareness at that point where this happens, at the very deep, simple, instinctive, at the floor of the mind where it happens, at the place where the chitta gets activated, you develop this attention. When you have that, you will be able to exercise the choice of not to click on it, not to convert that information into mental action. That awareness of that information cannot convert into mental action. A great example would be the test that Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa did for Swami Vivekananda. Before he became Vivekananda, he was an Narendra, he was a natural, he was a yoga brashta, he was a born yogi, he had this instinctive Nirodha Samskara in him from past life sadhana. So he says, before initiation, I want to test you. So Sri Ramakrishna placed the piece of jaggery in his tongue. Usually what will happen? The tongue will saliva, we will get saliva, right? The tongue will become wet. Whatever wetness was there, that is also gone. He placed that jaggery in his tongue, and his tongue became completely dry. And then Sri Ramakrishna understood that he has this natural tendency to withdraw the mind, that pratyahara, withdrawing the mind along with the senses. Senses along with the mind is withdrawn to its origin. The ability to switch off the movement of the mind directly, that is the power of Raja Yoga. You develop that power of Raja Yoga through this practice of concentrating on the gap between two mantras in japa. You develop that instinctive awareness over that process. And eventually, that awareness extends to all the natural thought processes. And combined with your Viveka, Vairagya, etc., you are able to achieve a better abidance in your understanding. You are able to implement the value of Viveka and Vairagya at the thought level, at the source of at the level of the source of thought, thereby improving your Nishtha, your abidance in the silence. And silence becomes easier. There is no struggle, there is no distracted mind and a concentrating mind. You are able to go with the mind that gets distracted, learns to let go of the object of distraction and comes back to its point of origin. That is called ekagrita parinama or nirodha samskara, one of that. So this natural ability to withdraw, to switch off, that is what you will develop. And that's when the what you called as witness for longer, staying as a witness for longer becomes natural. You can say that in a way. But it is important to understand it is the process in the chitta and the buddhi. It is basically the association of the buddhi with the chitta, the thinking faculty with the contents of the mind. Yeah? It is not you as the supreme consciousness. You as the supreme consciousness is always there. It is irrespective of whether the mind is silent or moving. It is irrespective of the mind, whether the mind is awake or dreaming or deep sleep. This consciousness is completely not associated with anything. You, in your Swarupa, you are always the same, nothing happens to you. This whole talk is about the false self that has been created because of ignorance. All this is happening within the realm of ignorance. Okay. That is why I am telling it is yoga. It is not realization. It is a certain state of orientation of the intellect, basically progressive reduction of rajoguna and eventually tamoguna and establishing of shuddha sattva, which creates that consciousness of non-identification called viveka khyati. Yoganga anushthanad, by the practice of the limbs of yoga, ashuddhi kshaye, by the thus the impurities of rajas tamas being removed, jnanadipya viveka khyati. The flame of attention, the awareness and the discriminatory attention and awareness and the consciousness of reality, that which facilitates pure knowledge and which destroys false knowledge, mithya jnana, which destroys aviveka and all that, avidya and all that, and its further consequences. It destroys all of them. That flame becomes brighter. So that is the answer to this question. I hope I answered. The next is a very important question. I had a discussion with somebody about this war and all that. The person is a military, I think he must be a general or something above colonel from another country. So he expressed this idea. Very interesting. I think many people have this question, might be having this question. Actually, this is exactly where the book, here he means Bhagavad Gita, Sri Bhagavad Gita, where Bhagavad Gita conflicted with my mindset. His mindset is basically war is bad, there should be no war, which is common sense. Nobody wants war. Even no king wants war, no No sensible king or a sensible soldier wants war. War is actually meant for peace. War is not an end in itself. So everybody knows that. Any a sensible person knows that, unless one is driven by some funny ideology where war is a virtue. Okay, here where Krishna told the Bhagavad Gita, this conflicted with my mindset. What conflicted? Krishna told Arjuna that a war can be righteous and a duty. I think that the explaining was that it would be necessary to preserve the moral order. Good. This may stand for a soldier, but not for a leader who could decide a different path than hostilities. This teaching sounds to me awful similar to the ones that initiated the crusades or the jihads. A teaching tailored to be useful to the rulers. A concession made by the religious system in order to be adopted by those in power. It's a very, very valid question, because when you read the history of humanity and the association, all the atheists and everybody, the problem with religion is because religion has continuously caused war and destruction over the last 2 millennium. Once the monotheism started in the Middle East, from that time onwards, religious wars, actually the violence started with uh, any kind of, not essentially monotheistic. You will be very surprised why all the violence based on religion starts when there is an exclusivist cult that wants everybody to follow it. Generally, where the different people belong to different types of dharma, what you call as desha, kala, patra, the place, the time, and the individual's nature. Based on that, the dharma changes, and each person has his or her own swadharma. So this world and this humanity is like a huge painting with so many colors, where every color has its place, where difference is not a problem. Being different is not a problem. So that is what is basically Sanatana Dharma. And it has the knowledge of dharma. Dharma is there, something to be discovered, and dharma is a knowledge. That is why which is to be discovered and understood by a well trained and a qualified mind. That is why you have athado janma jignasa. Right? Now, after the required qualifications of initiation and everything, and following the rules and all that, a person inquiry into what is dharma. Here it comes in the context of Veda, but we can also extend it for Samanya Dharma. So to make a dharmic decision, to make a judgment, a dharmic judgment, whether this is correct or not, requires a mind that is not driven by personal agenda, and requires a mind that is not completely blinded by any specific ideology, and a mind that is extremely alert and available for the variables that are active in that situation, and a mind that is committed to everybody's welfare in the long run, right? So such a mind can, with the correct information, access to the right information, can make a proper decision and a judgment regarding what is correct or not correct, interpretation of the Dharma Shastra, if you want to put it in a Sanatana Dharma context, for a given situation. Right? Now, when this is absent and one uniform cult, a cult of uniformity, like Buddhism, for example, where everybody is told to give up their original dharma and follow the teachings of this one person, one personality, and all the sampradayas are destroyed. That's how it started, and randomly giving a monkhood, randomly popularizing, marketing, and imposing nivritti dharma. Nivritti dharma means the ideal of renunciation. Renunciation is not for everybody. For renunciation, one should have adhikaritvam or a certain level of qualification of what we call as sadhana chatushtaya, which we discussed, viveka, vairagya, mokshutva, etc. So without that, if a person becomes a monk, one becomes what is called as a rice bag monk. All the Buddhist countries, the senior monks, very well, they call these people who convert into become a monk in Buddhism. They call them rice bags. They came to get free food because you have a lot of, not only in Buddhism, even in our Hinduism, we have udaranimitam bahukrita veshaha. We have a statement by Sri Adi Shankaracharya. He says, one guy is shaved head. In Bhajagovindam it comes. Jatilo mundilunchita keshaha. Kashayambara bahukrita veshaha. Like that it comes. There is one person with a ochre robe, another person with a shaved head, another person with a long hair, matted locks. All these guys go about. It is all nothing but just for external fashion statement, just for getting free food. Udara nimittam, for the sake of the belly. Bahakrita veshaha. Dress for outside. It says, so this problem is there. Because of this problem, we have the, at least in policy level, in Sanatana Dharma, we have the concept of adhikaritvam. Anybody and everybody cannot become a monk. But when Buddhism came, this changed. And anybody and everybody started becoming a monk. And becoming a monk became a kind of a common ideal for everybody. And because of that, there is a lot of dharmic destruction in the society. There is too much emphasis on Samanya Dharma and complete, you know, a complete chaos in what is called as the Vishesha Dharma or Vaidika Dharma. And a lot of concepts started changing, and people started getting, escapism became a virtue. And then these guys went and converted. They became evangelists. This evangelism is a problem. This Buddhist evangelists, they went and started converting the kings and then spreading the teaching and whatever, like you have now for evangelic Christianity. Buddhism was like that, going all over the world and spreading. All this nonsense, Vaidika Dharma never did. You never go and impose your culture on a society. You go and study them and be with them and see, try to make them follow their Swadharma. That is the approach. That is why we have so many varied myriad colors of social groups under Sanatana Dharma, where everybody has, peaceful coexistence and appreciating of difference. If you go to each varna, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, among these four categories, you will have so many jatis, and each jati, each social group, they have their own patron deity, they have their own priest from their own community. You have priests from their own community. If you go to village temples, the priest is not a Brahmin. The priest will be from that specific community. So each community maintains their own worship rituals, their own acharyas and everything, their own certain books, their legends. If you take Vishwakarma community has its own, the main founding divinity. The so-called nowadays what they call as Dalit oppressed and all that. All these politically twisted narratives. The community is represented by that. They have their own origin, divine founder, who is the divine origin of that community, and they have their own temples, they have their own priests. And if you go to that Hindu Dharma exhibition, it is conducted, I think, every year once or every 2-3 years once. You go to that exhibition, amazing. You see that so many communities. You never know that the Sanatana Dharma heritage is so diverse, and there are so many colors, and everything has its place. It is exactly like the natural order. It is embracing the natural order, and then from there helping the human being evolve by embracing the natural order, the cognitive order, the conscious psychological order, and the differences that are natural in the society. You embrace that, and then from there you grow. And of course, like in any institutionalized system, there will be some corruption, there will be some omissions and commissions that needs to be corrected. That's why you get great personalities from time to time who come and revive the traditions. In each section of the society, you have acharyas who come and revive the traditions. You have the reformist saints. They always come to tell what is actually more important, not to get stuck up with when people get stuck up with the rules and lose the spirit of the law, and then they get stuck with the law, there is always a saintly person, an enlightened person who comes and awakens them to the spirit of the law without compromising the law, without creating a blanket monochrome culture on top of everyone. Instead of that, they help them discover the inherent dharma that is there in the society, in the nature, right? So instead of that, what happened, these uh, like these uniformist cults beginning with Buddhism, it also coincides with Kali Yuga. The Kali Yuga's adharma is propagated by these. They first destroy the natural dharma, then they create a fake dharma, and then based on that everything goes. So starting with Buddhism, and then you have all these monotheistic cults from the Middle East, uh, all these desert cults that are now dominating the world. So because of them, uh, the compulsion to propagate one belief system, non-verifiable belief system, over another belief system. We had a similar thing in our Sanatana Dharma also, when it got offhand, the conflict between Vaishnavites and Shaivites. Once the Vaishnavites started becoming exclusivist, and that is what Shaivites say. Then the Vaishnavites have their own story against the Shaivites. So I don't know who is right. We have to do a lot of historical research for that. But fundamentally, when one person becomes exclusivist and says the other one is not okay, I am okay, you are not okay. When that, instead of saying I am okay in my place, you are okay in your place. Instead of that, I am telling I am okay, you are not okay, you should become like me. When that started in any society, then ideology driven wars started, right? Then this ideology wants to become the only ideology in the world. This belief system wants to be the only belief system in the world. That is where the problem started, and all what this person mentioned here as crusades and jihads were that cannot be equated with the context of the Mahabharata war. This Mahabharata war is very specific, and there is a lot of reasons, and there was always a lot of effort. There were efforts by so many saintly people. There was effort by Krishna himself. He went as an ambassador. They tried to avert the war, and he asked, you don't need to give us the kingdom back. Please give us 5 villages. There are 5 brothers, one village per person. You know, that is enough. We let us avoid this war. This war is not needed. They tried a lot of peace missions with a lot of compromise. And still, Duryodhana said, I will not give even the land equivalent of the tip of a needle. Even that much land I will not give. Get lost. And that is when they had to see that, this is this if I refuse this as a Kshatriya, as a person committed to protect the society, social order, and as a person committed to protecting dharma in the world, that is the Swadharma of a Kshatriya. It is not becoming of me to, it is not correct on my part to allow the dharma to flourish. He is going to show this sick attitude over his people. This guy was already ruling in a very bad way, overtaxing the people and all that. So after making all the efforts for peace, when there was no other way out, only then the Mahabharata war was declared. This is very different from the crusades and the jihads. And all this kind of arguments and blanket statement about, equating all the traditions together in one blanket of religious wars, religious extremism and violence is a very, very unscholarly and a wrong approach. It comes from not studying properly. Bhagavad Gita is part of a major epic. So the war context of Bhagavad Gita, the decisions regarding the war and all that, for to understand that, one has to study the rest of the epic. Bhagavad Gita as a text, as a teaching text. The purpose of that Bhagavad Gita is not deciding whether the war is correct or not. Having decided that the war is correct, having come to the battlefield, Arjuna has a problem because they are my people. They are my people. I am theirs. What Sri Shankaracharya refers in his commentary as shoka and moha, delusion and sorrow. Sorrow coming from subjectivity, blinding the objective reality that is facing, that he has to face. It is not because I am not fighting my grandfather and my guru, my acharya, my Dronacharya, Kripa, and all those people on the other side. I am not fighting them, Dronacharya and Bhishmacharya. I am not fighting them because they are my teacher and grandfather. I am fighting them because they are on the side of adharma, which Bhishma himself says after the 18 days, when he's saying Vishnu Sahasranama and all that, that time when he is questioned, why did you not stand up? Why are you able to preach all this dharma now? And why you did not see all these errors of the Kauravas when you are in the palace, when Draupadi was disrobed? Why did you keep quiet? Then Bhishma says, I was eating the food of that palace every day. Because that food is cooked in a dharmic place, that food corrupted my intellect, and because of that, that blood was flowing in me. Because of that adharmic blood flowing in me, I could not make the right decision. I could not stand up for dharma. It, it suppressed me, and it could not allow me to stand up for dharma. Now, after all the wounds, when most of the blood is drained, my pure consciousness comes back. The effect of the dharma is gone, adharma on my chitta is gone, and my chitta is able to shine with its original knowledge. So now I am able to see what is dharma and what is adharma. It's a very, very important teaching. Yeah? So the Mahabharata war is not a problem. Arjuna never had a problem with war all his life. He was very happy to be in a war and win a war. He had done that for a king before, and all his life he was fighting. He even fought Lord Shiva to get that astra. So Arjuna is not a person who is afraid of fighting. What happened was, Arjuna is not a person who is against killing, not even that. Arjuna had a problem because these are all my brothers, these are all my uncles, these are all my grandfather and father figures, and these are all my teachers. I don't want to hit. It is all because of I and mine interfering in the judgment of what is right in this given moment. Having agreed to come for war, having come to the battlefield, there you cannot do all this unnecessary thinking driven by your personal whims and fancies. That is exactly why the teaching of Bhagavad Gita begins. This sets the context for the teaching where the source of this delusion is addressed. The source of this delusion is avidya. It is addressed by the teaching of Bhagavad Gita, and that is why Bhagavad Gita is considered as Yoga Shastra and Brahma Vidya. Brahma Vidya Yam Yoga Shastre Krishna Arjuna Samvade. It comes, at the end of. Traditionally, this line is added to the original text of Bhagavad Gita to remind us that it is the essence of the Upanishads and it is a compendium on the teachings of yoga. So that is the context of Bhagavad Gita. The purpose of Bhagavad Gita is not to decide whether the war is right or wrong. Given that decision, that war is, in this context, the war is considered as dharmically correct for the Pandava. Having committed to that, now you cannot step back for personal reasons. And the personal reasons overwhelming your judgment pushes you to adharma. So dharma is to be maintained, and for dharma to be maintained and sustained, one needs a mind that is free from personal likes and dislikes. One needs a mind that is free from shoka and moha. And shoka and moha cannot be cleared completely unless one realizes what is one's true nature. So the self-knowledge becomes essential in this context. So that is the whole context of Bhagavad Gita, and it is extremely different from religion being used for harassing the other side of the equation, harassing the other parts of the society, other parts of the humanity, in order to further a personal agenda. That would be, religion being misused. Giving a religious sanction to murder some 26 people when what we had in Pahalgam terror attack, He went and asked each person, are you a Hindu or a Muslim? And whoever was not a Muslim was identified and killed. Whatever may be the reason, political reason, whatever you may say, but there is a permission from the ideology to do that. Right? There is one version of the teaching, extremist teaching, which permits that, which trains terrorists, and which says the whole world should be converted into this religion only. The same thing applies to the other monotheistic cult also. The whole world should be subject to my religion. There is another monotheistic cult where they don't convert others, but they say that the Gentiles should be subjugated and kept under our control. We we are the ones who should rule over everyone. We should be, we are the chosen people of God. It is there. I'm not kidding. So the problem with monotheistic cults, the problem with all these uniformist cults like Buddhism, for example, they say you don't have to do anything, you don't have to do Pitru Karma, Veda is wrong, Veda need not be respected, and all this, then everybody go and sit and meditate to solve all the problems. And then they will talk about reincarnation, karma, and all that. Where did they get the knowledge? They say Buddha said. Buddha could have gone into uh, if you logically speak, an individual's experience cannot be a pramana. Whatever is Buddha's experience is his experience. He could have been on a LSD trip, God knows. So the pramanatvam of the Veda stands unique. He actually comes from the same tradition. All the knowledge of the non-verifiable things that Lord Buddha shared is from the Sanatana. It is not simply his experience. He probably would have validated by his experience, but that does not give the pramanatvam, that does not give the validation of that information as correct. The validation comes because it is in the Shruti. So Shruti is the pramana, not all that. So all that we have discussed before. So it is very different when it comes to establishing dharma. The context of Bhagavad Gita is not telling Arjuna with a religious sanction to wage the war. The context of Bhagavad Gita is, since you have decided to wage the war and since we have arrived at the conclusion this is the dharmic war, after trying all the other means and seeing that all the other means for peace have failed, having arrived at the war, now you cannot back off for the sake of personal fancies. That is the teaching of Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita comes in that context only. So it cannot be, the teaching of Bhagavad Gita cannot be compared with the religious sanction that pushed the crusades for whatever reason or the jihad for whatever reason. It cannot be compared with that. Yeah. And it also cannot be compared with all the violence that were done in the name of Buddhism in Sri Lanka, in Japan, and everywhere else. And also in India. There is a, when Shamanas, I think the Jains or Buddhists, I don't know what the Shamanas mean in this context. In the Shaivite, saints were tortured in Tamil Nadu. Sri Swamihal Drinavakar was bound to a pillar and thrown in the sea. He was put inside a calcium furnace. And using his yogic powers and his devotion to the Lord Shiva, he escaped that. And there are these various songs that he has composed. Kattunnai Puttiyor Kadalil Pachinum Natrunayavadama Shivaya. This song he sang at the time of being tortured and trying to be killed. By being thrown in the ocean, he floated on the water along with that pillar. So with all these miracles, he converted the Shamana king back to Shaivism. That is what the story says. So the Shamanas were converting the kings and trying to, destroy Shaivism and all that. We have all these stories. So any uniformist cult has this problem. While Sanatana Dharma is not uniformist, here we have a very clear ideology that you should avoid violence. Ahimsa paramo dharmaha says. And then the next line also says, Dharmi ahimsa tataivacha ahimsa for the sake of protecting dharma is allowed. Provided all other means have been exhausted, there is no other way, then you please don't be afraid to lift your weapon. In order to protect the weak, in order to protect dharma, in order to protect the moral order in the society, if somebody is threatening it, you are not going ahead to somewhere else in some area that does not belong to you. You just go into that place and say, hey, what you are practicing is wrong. What my scripture tells is right. So you have to follow my scripture. If you don't follow my scripture, I will kill you. That is not what we are talking here as a dharmic war. Dharmic war means Somebody is aggressing with a lot of adharma and does not allow dharma to be practiced in the society, then you take up arms and and you try all the negotiations, and if everything fails, then it is the duty of the Kshatriya to take up arms and be ready to even sacrifice his or her life in order to protect dharma. So that is how it goes. And it is very, very different from crusades or the jihads. So this is how I would like to answer that. And so it is not a teaching tailored to be useful to rulers. It is a teaching that tailors the rulers to be useful for everybody. That is how I will conclude. Okay. So we have discussed these two. And is there any other question you can tell me? As long as until somebody posts the question, I will proceed on that discussion about removing the shoka and moha. In Bhagavad Gita talks about the the knots of the mind. We say, the knots of the mind. The knots of the mind in the sense, what we call as the avidya, asmitaraga, dvesha, abhinivesha. It manifests in different levels in different situations. The physical condition, vata, pitta, kapha, etc., the influence of the diet, the subtlest portion of the food that you ate, the thoughts of the person uh, that is preparing the food, all of these influence how the food affects the mind. That is one. The intrinsic quality of the food and the method of cooking, the thoughts of the person who is cooking, and the way in which we are eating, how we are eating, how much we are eating, all that. At the body level, that converts and that influences the quality of the mind and the what quality is predominating in the chitta, sattva, rajas, tamas, right? So that is why you have a lot of shlokas dedicated in the Bhagavad Gita about sattvic aharam. What is the sattvic food, rajasic food, tamasic food? You have in Bhagavad Gita there in the final chapters. This is one. And then at the prana level, at the urges level, the habituation, the power of the habits are embedded in our pranic body, and that pushes the senses and thereby excites the mind and thereby invokes the thoughts that are connected to satisfying those urges. It is like the same example I gave you, the gulab jamun. The moment you see gulab jamun, alive, and then the idea of how to obtain that gulab jamun and enjoy that comes. The same thing can be extended to the different desires. Then you have simple desires, sensory desires, then you have egoistic desires. So, if we are going by the likes and dislikes, there are these two levels happening in our experience. Okay. So, when we are, this is one important aspect that we need to understand. What are we working toward in all our practices is basically the egoistic desires and the egoistic fears, the likes and dislikes driven by the kartrutva and bhoktrutva in the buddhi. I am the doer idea, I am the enjoyer idea. So this pushes us into and how it weaves the web of samsara. That is what we need to understand. And how to distinguish. A simple example I will tell you. You take a walk. You take a walk in the beach. You see a nice palm tree, maybe one neem tree, the sound of the wave, uh, some birds flying. Very nice, right? These are pleasant sights. Then probably there is some plastic trash in the corner. That's an unpleasant sight. So you have the reaction of the mind to what is pleasant, what is unpleasant. But there is nothing personal about it. There's nothing personal about it. Because let us say you are a cleanliness activist. You are an activist. You have emotionally, egoistically invested a lot in maintaining the public places clean, and you have an NGO, and you are very invested in reforming the society and things like that. The same beach walk is nice going on, And then you see the trash, some plastic bottle, something thrown in the corner, plastic covers. Now, this is unpleasant. There is a normal invocation of the unpleasantness in the mind, because it is a disharmonious sight. It is not a pleasant thing like how you see a seashell on the floor. No, you are walking by the beach, you see a seashell. You see different things, probably a dead turtle. That's all right. It's all part of nature. And then you see a rubber slipper, Hawaii slipper, blue color rubber slipper floating. And then some plastic bags with some flowers and thrown inside, that is there on the shore. Now that stands out. That is disharmonious. So you have a certain instinctive tuning to what feels harmonious, what feels disharmonious, right? So you respond to that. There is a mental response to seeing something harmonious. There is a natural mental response to something disharmonious. Now, this is a chitta vritti. It is a kind of a vritti. It is natural. That is okay. Now, let's come to the case of the person who is very invested in reforming, in cleanliness activism. Now, the same person sees the plastic. Immediately after that natural the natural unpleasantness that comes as a response to something disharmonious that comes to everybody. On top of that, this guy creates a personal involvement. He creates a certain personal response to it. Starts thinking about all the things that are not okay, and starts cursing the society, and starts you start feeling some kind of a bitterness. You feel that urge to clean that. A lot of that. You are not able to just walk away. Right? I'm not telling that you should not do that. It's good to clean, that what they call as plogging. You're walking around and picking all the trash like our Prime Minister does. Wherever he goes for a walk in the beach, he will carry a sack and pick up all the trash. And there are a lot of people who started doing that, which is very good. It's a very noble act. It's a very noble thing to do. But I'm here only concentrating on the nature of the mind, the nature of two kinds of thought pattern. The personal story start. Similarly, you are walking by the beach, and a lot of things, nice things are there. And then there is somebody who is selling a corn. He's roasting the corn and then putting some masala. You're getting the masala smell. See, the moment I tell you there is a slight salivation, that is a natural response. Then you want to buy the corn and enjoy that corn. Somebody is roasting some, cheese barbecue. So you want to buy that and enjoy that. There is a personal involvement. Oh, this is nice. On top of this is nice, the vritti that perceives that as something nice. There is a personal desire to associate with that niceness, to prolong that experience, and to create a personal involvement and an enjoyment where the bhoga buddhi comes. And then there is the kartrutva buddhi, the desire to act in a certain direction. Then you tell yourself, no, I am in diet, I cannot have this ice cream or whatever. Or you say, oh, it is nice, I can have it. Anyway, I know I'm going to eat. It will be good to have it a little bit before the food. It will be like an appetizer. So either there is a positive justification that pushes you into action, or a negative justification that restrains you from action. And then this starts in the mind. Now that is the second layer that comes on top of the first layer. This first natural responses to things is what we are trying to work with our Nista classes, in our meditation practices, with karma yoga, with all this japa and all the study of Vedanta and everything. We are trying to work with the helplessness that we have with respect to this circuit that creates a personal involvement and a personalized story over and above the natural interactions that happen between the objects and the piece of perception. The natural interaction between the objects of perception and the faculties of perception, the five senses and the mind, the natural stimulus response mechanism is not an issue. That does not create samsara by itself. What creates samsara is the personal track that we add to this natural track. So there is a natural track of experience, and then there is a personal track of experience added on top of that, embedded on top of it. So it is this personal track of experience that we are trying to clear through the teachings and the practice of yoga and through the teachings of Vedanta. All right. So that we need to understand that very clearly, and it is very, very important to understand this in order to understand the purpose and of the practice, so that we are not wrongly attempting to erase all experience from the mind. We are not attempting to erase the natural experience of life from the mind. We are attempting to remedy the noise, what Acharya ji refers as shoka and moha, the delusional, personal, subjective involvement in the natural track of life that creates attachment, aversion, and that creates fear and clinging, and that creates this is what which is called as samsara. That creates the story of samsara over and above the normal flow of life. The disease of samsara that gets created over the normal orchestra of life, the noise of samsara that arises in the middle of this orchestra of life, right? So that is what we are trying to remedy and come back into this natural order of things, where we are in complete alignment with the natural flow of life, which is called ritambhara. In Yoga Shastra, there is a word called ritambhara. A person who is in Dharmamega Samadhi and who has attained that highest kind of Samadhi where the ego is not active, he is said to be in a state of consciousness. His mind is said to be in a quality called ritambhara tatra prajna. That person's cognitive faculty and the mind is consciousness is what is called as ritambhara. Ritam is truth in action, which is the universal order of nature and life, the divine order that in which all this universe appears, in which all this is sustained, into which everything goes back. That divine order that governs these universal rhythms of life. Your mind is completely in tune with that ritambhara. So that is what is the goal. The goal is not to erase experience and sit like a statue for 24 hours. That is not the goal. The goal is to erase this fake story of samsara that is overriding this beautiful experience called life. So with that, I will conclude the lecture. So there are no questions yet. So we will finish the class. Please think about what we discussed and come back with your questions and inquiries in the next class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Thank you.